Howdy, everyone. Welcome back to our daily Bible study. I am Matthew Gage, pastor at Faith Baptist Church in Decatur, Texas, and we'll be in Genesis chapter number 14. Genesis chapter number 14. Now, just a quick recap where we're at. We are looking at the life of Abram right now. He is settled into the promised land. Lot has separated from him and has made kind of an alliance, I guess you could say, with Sodom and Gomorrah, and we'll see the fate of that, begin to see some of the fate of that decision in this chapter, though it won't be fully developed for a little while longer. So where we begin here in this chapter is with the record of some kings and nations at war, and these are ancient nations in some ancient cities and such that are at war. And I don't want to spend a lot of time going on and researching and telling y'all, where these little people are and getting all these things. I don't think that's really relevant to this. Plus, I'm trying to keep this short, and I go off on archaeology and history if I'm not careful. But I do want to point out that when we're dealing with this, that if you look at a map and you find the Holy Land, the Promised Land, Israel, you find it on a map, you'll find that it is in a crossroads of civilizations. Right? You have Egypt, down to the south and west. To the east, you have, where Babylon and Persia, and those great nations were. Then you have to the north, you had the ancient civilizations of Phoenicia, and then Assyria, and all these different kingdoms, and it's kind of on that land route for trade coming out of Egypt and then up into into the Middle East, and then cutting back over through Turkey and Asia Minor back towards into Europe. So Israel is just right at the crossroads of history. So having an account like this of wars and battles, this is, I guess, the first one we've come across, but it will not be the last. There's so many times we have Egypt coming through, or Babylon coming through, or, get later, the Greeks and the Romans coming through. It may not be in the scriptures, those battles, but history will tell you that we have all these great empires just constantly marching through, and Israel is just stuck right in the middle of them. And so we see a little bit of that here with these kings that are at war. So, all right, so Genesis chapter number 14, let's get going. Verse number 1. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. And I know I didn't get those anywhere close to being right. Verse 3, all these were joined together in the vale of Siddim, which is the Salt Sea. That's kind of the plain on the southern side of the Dead Sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer. Once again, doing the best I can. In the 13th year they rebelled. In verse 5, and in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir, unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness. So we had here, they were conquered people, probably paying tribute and such, and after 12 years they rebel, they reestablish some independence, and here come the conquerors again. There's war again, and we see they must have come in with a vengeance and have come in and reconquered the lands and the people. Verse 7, and they returned and came to En-Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites that dwell in Hazazon Tamar. Now that's, once again, we're dealing very much with the southern part of the Holy Land, down kind of south and west of the Dead Sea. Verse 8, and there went out the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, the same as Zoar. And they joined battle with them in the Vale of Siddim, so back there in that plain over on the south side of the Dead Sea. Verse 9, with Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, and with Tidal, king of nations, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. So the battle of 4 kings against 5. Verse 10, the Vale of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and they that remained fled to the mountains. So as they are there, and the battle begins to go against them, they begin to flee, and because of the terrain is not very good for battle, that the kings fall there. And of course, when you start losing leaders in a battle like that, you're in trouble. So people are fleeing. And it says here in verse 11, and they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Now, who's that they in verse 11 and 12 that took the goods and took Lot? That would be the victorious side, the ones listed in verse number 9, Chedorlaomer, in those guys. So I'm not going to say them more times than I have to. So they've come in, they've carried off the spoils of war. Verse 13. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the land of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. So Abram now is dwelling. He's got an agreement made. He's got an alliance with these 3 Amorites, and they're not attacking each other. They're probably in trade and mutual beneficiary relationship here. But this one escapes and tells them what has happened in verse 14. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Now, I want to point out right here, it talks about his brother. The Hebrew language does not have, especially in the ancient language, does not have the terminology in place like we do for naming off a multitude of relatives. So it could say someone is the son of so-and-so. Well, that son could mean grandson, could mean descendant. And so in this case, brother is actually, talking about like nephew. So that term's a very general term in the Hebrew. It just basically means a relation. So it can mean a cousin, it can mean a nephew. There's a lot of different things that it could mean. So I just want to point that out. That's not necessarily a incorrect translation. It's just that the Hebrew doesn't express these relations with the same, I won't say accuracy, but the same detail that we have today. Verse number, I'll point out there too, it talks about having the 318, these are the servants he has, and they've trained. They're kind of like a little militia, I guess. I mean, you got to be ready in that time. There's no army, police force really, so got to be ready if somebody tries to raid. So he's got these men, and they're ready for battle. So he gets them together. They chase after them. Verse 15, he divided himself against them, he and his servants by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. So Dan's on the northern side of Israel. Now they're going up further up into kind of modern Syria near Damascus. I'll point out this is some fairly advanced battle techniques that he's using. He's split his force. He's attacking at night. Abram was a very, very smart person. And even though he's not like a great general or anything, what the prowess he exposes here does show that he was a very intelligent, very wise ruler. Let's see here. Verse 16. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. So recovers all the spoils, recovers all the captives, and returns back home. Verse 17. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. Verse 18. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. Now, Melchizedek, this is one of the great mysteries of the Scripture. Who is Melchizedek? And I've seen different theories on that. I do not know who he was. He's going to be mentioned again in Hebrews. I believe it's chapter number 7, but he's just a mysterious figure. What do we know about him? He is said to be the king of Salem and a priest. That Salem, a lot of people do believe that is Jerusalem. But being a priest, now I want to point this out in that some people would say, well, look at the history here of the world in the Old Testament. And is Abram the only one that knows who the true God is? No, he's not. Look at Melchizedek. Melchizedek knows who the true God is. So I think there is a consciousness, and there are people who follow the true God. Now, are they Jews by a modern standard? Early to be a Jew here because Abram doesn't have children yet. But I'm saying, does it look the same as what Judaism will look like? No. But there is a religion for the true God that exists. There are those that do trust in the true God even before Abram. And another example of that I would point at is Moses and his father-in-law Jethro. That Jethro is some type of priest also, and seems to know the true God, but it's a different relationship than what the Jews had. So I want to point that out, that Abram's not the only one that has the truth. There is a widespread still consciousness, knowledge, and obedience, respect for the true God. So Melchizedek comes, verse number 19, and he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies in thine hand. And he gave him tithes of all. First mention of tithing in the Scripture. What's tithe? It's a tenth. So he gave an offering of the spoils to Melchizedek, to this priest, which must have been quite a bit. You think about what they took, that must have been a pretty large sum. Verse 21, the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons and take the goods to thyself. Now, king of Sodom, of course, what do we know about them? Comparing them to the king Melchizedek. Melchizedek knows the true God. He's a moral person. The king of Sodom is not. This new king that's risen up, and he is looking for an angle. He sees how powerful Abram is. He's wanting to get an alliance going, thinking, hey, next time these people come and attack, I want Abram on my side. So what he's offering here, it would make sense. Hey, we'll split the deal. But in doing so, he would owe something back to this man. He would owe something because he really, in one sense, he could have kept also, no, I won in battle. You didn't do anything. But in doing so, like I said, this would forge some kind of an alliance or confederacy between the two men, and Abram's not going to do that. Verse 22. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich. Save only that which the young man have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, Eshcol, Mamre, let them take their portion. So what does Abram say? He says, anything that was mine, you can have it, basically minus the cost of traveling and food and incidentals along the way. You're going to take care of my expenses, but that's all I'm taking from you. I'm not owing you anything. We're not forging any kind of an alliance here at all. But he said, you can talk to the men with me who came and helped. I'm not speaking for them. They may want their part. They can do what they wish. But as for me, this is what I'm doing. So anyway, a lot of wisdom shown on Abram's part. Number one, in how he handles the battle. Number two, his respect towards God and the priest of God there, Melchizedek. And number three, in avoiding an alliance with the king of Sodom. So a lot of good stuff there in chapter number 14. You could easily look that over in the history of Abram, but there's a lot of really good stuff there to talk about. So anyway, that'll wrap this one up. I appreciate you watching, and I hope it's been a help and a blessing to you.